Hey, I'm Wamsley. I'm the CEO of Auroracorialis Publishing. I'm a writing coach and I'm an award-winning author of 10 books. And in this video, I want to talk about what my writing process is because I'm always talking about how I tell my clients what to do, but I've written books too. So yes, I write fiction, but I work with people who write nonfiction, and a lot of what I do is really applicable over here too. So that's how I figured out what the process should be for nonfiction. So just opening it up a little bit and telling you about what my writing process is. And maybe that'll help you. It'll get you some ahas too. So whenever I decide that I'm going to work on a book, the first thing I do is I let it brew a little bit. I don't immediately run over and start, banging away on the keyboard. I let my mind kind of play with it. You need those moments when you're like in the shower or driving to pick up your kids, when your brain is kind of working on stuff in the background. Everybody has that going on at some point during the day, and you know that those are the times when you get your biggest ahas. So don't immediately think, "Oh my God, this is what I have to do. This is exactly what I need to write about. I got to do it right this second." Um, Give yourself a little bit of space and time because it needs to evolve. Make sure that you have that built into your writing process. It might be just a couple days that you need to do this, it might be a week, a couple weeks, but I like to let things kind of brew, kind of, marinate, if you will. Once I have a pretty solid idea of what I want to write about, that's when I start jotting down my notes. And I don't always sit down and do like a linear sort of thing. Sometimes it starts out as like, okay, this is what my idea is. Let's flesh out this concept. What does it look like overall? What I like to do is kind of write a paragraph, a very loose paragraph about what the entire book is going to be about. Once I have that, again, I'm going to let it marinate for, maybe a few minutes, kind of let it be, out in the universe. Like, okay, this is kind of going to happen. What do we do next? Um, After that, I like to start thinking about, how do I get from point A to point B? And this is going to be exactly the same as what any nonfiction author needs to do. You want to take your readers on a journey from point A to point B. You want them to have a win somewhere in that. By the time they get to the end, then they have that win, right? So whenever I'm doing fiction, I do the same sort of thing. What am I going to have my characters accomplish in the time that it takes for somebody to be reading this book? What are they going to get at the end? It's a very important thing to think about when you're working on your book. I already know who my audience is. I write women's fiction, and most people who are writing a book for their businesses are going to know who their audience is too. Most of those people are writing a book for the same audience that they are working with. Yeah, you might be writing for somebody who's like needs a warm up before they come work with you. Get them some, stuff under their belt so they're prepared, they know what they're doing, all of that stuff. So absolutely think about that if you need to. But really, once you've got that solid idea of an audience, that's when it comes to that purpose. And I know I always talk about audience and purpose, but that's the second piece of it. The purpose is going to be like, what do they get throughout this book? And again, with my characters, it's what are they getting through the arc of this story? Once I've kind of figured that out, that's when I start into my actual outlining. That's when I say, all right, chapters 1 through, let's say, 12. 12 is my favorite number. So I might write down 12 numbers and say, okay, chapter 1, chapter 2, here are some of the things I want to make sure we pepper in along the journey. Where do these things go? Where do they need to happen? Because I want to make sure that all the different story arcs that I've got going on are evolving, that they're all weaving throughout the book, right? And it's going to be something similar for your nonfiction because you want to make sure that everything makes sense in the order that you've got it. If you're teaching somebody how to tie their shoes, you don't want to start out with, then you run out the door. Over here, you're going to put the laces in the shoes. Over here, you're going to sit down on a bench and make sure that you can actually, reach your feet. You want to make sure everything is chronological, that it makes sense and flows in the correct order. Using the shoe tying as an example, you want to make sure that they're getting to the end and they are getting that when those people can tie their shoes. They no longer need the Velcro shoes. Um, Velcro shoes are awesome. So you want to make sure that that's what's going on throughout your book. That's my basic process, is going through this, starting with the idea, moving into, the marinating, and then going through the outline. Now from here, this is where this is where people kind of debate on how to handle it. Now with a fiction book, I feel like it works best to start at the beginning of the book and move through, chronologically, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. But when I'm working with my nonfiction authors, I always tell them, if it makes more sense to you to work on chapter 6 today because you just talked to somebody who had that issue, that stuff's fresh in your mind. That's where you need to go. So make sure that you are kind of navigating that in a looser format. If you're somebody who really needs structure and you really need a strict, method to follow XYZ, then absolutely, if it feels best to you, work through it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Make sure that the way you are writing your book works for you. Don't try to copy somebody else's method just because that's what they said you need to do. Listen to what people are saying if you're listening to multiple people. The way that I do things isn't going to be right for every single person out there. So always keep that in mind. Once you have an idea of what the outline is and you do start writing your book, you want to make sure that you are accomplishing the writing sessions. So always go back and check, or go through your calendar and check when you can fit those in. You want to make sure that you're moving forward, because if you decide you're going to write a book and you only wrote a paragraph in the past 3 months, you're really not getting anywhere. So you're not going to meet your goals. Those are some of the ways that I like to work on my book. Again, I write fiction, but a lot of that is applicable to nonfiction. I have a writing group that I work with for my fiction books. And so I know I'm going to be writing a chapter every month because I am accountable. I have to get that chapter to that group. Usually I write a lot more than a chapter per month, but I've been super busy this year and it hasn't worked out that way. And the book I'm writing right now has been kind of, there are nebulous pieces to it. There are pieces that I'm like, I'm not sure how this is going to fit together. Yes, I've written a book in 6 weeks, but I've also taken a full year to write a book before. So I know that as long as I am moving forward and working on it, that I'm going to get it done. So I hope this was helpful to you. I hope that now you can sit down and figure out what your own process is and get moving forward with your book.